Should you direct register your shares?
Some, yes. All, probably not. My guess is Superstonk overestimates the importance of DRSing. That's not to say DRS isn't important or that it won't play a role, but it probably will not play as big a role as people think it will play. My guess is when it comes to DRSing is that the role it's going to play is going to be a secondary role. It's going to be like an emergent property that's going to come from this. There are two advantages I can see to DRSing. The first one is you diversify your brokerage holdings. Now, in my particular situation, I do have a small amount of shares DRS, but by no means do I have the majority of my shares DRS. The reason I do this isn't necessarily an endorsement for or against DRSing. Rather, it's to say, when this starts kicking off, I expect there to be chaos in the market. And depending upon whatever one wants to do at the given time, I think it makes sense to hold one's shares across a variety of brokerages, just like it might make sense to hold your cash across a variety of banks. Sure, Josh, you might have your favorite banking institution, and by all means, do the majority of your business with them, but it probably also makes sense to have a few other banks or credit unions, whatever, in your back pocket just in case. I think the same thing is true of the brokerages. And the second thing gets into what I would call like the second order or the emergent property effects of DRSing. There are two examples I can think of. The first one is the easy one of crypto or perhaps some other dividend, or let's just say some other non-traditional dividend. Now, let me be really, really clear here, Josh. I am not saying that you are not going to receive a potential crypto dividend if you haven't DRSed your shares. That is not what I'm trying to say here. What I am trying to say is that the simplest way for you to own your shares will be, I would assume, would be to have them directly registered with the transfer agent computer shares. And so therefore my assumption would also be if there's something funny, think like a non-traditional dividend or crypto dividend coming down the pike, those people who have DRSed their shares will probably have less friction in getting it. And again, just to be clear, if you hold your shares at a major brokerage, Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, IBKR, I still think that you're going to get it. But Josh, consider this. Recently, we had the proxy material go out for the voting of GME. And I will note that, again, the majority of my shares are with Fidelity. Real life example. Josh, consider the voting proxy materials that recently went out for the upcoming shareholders meeting. If you had your shares directly held with computer shares, I believe those were the first ones that actually got the ability to log in and vote. Now, I hold my shares at Fidelity, and it might have taken me about 5 extra business days for the information to come from my side. So again, no issues on that front. But again, my point though is that if you are doing business directly with the transfer agent, and if there's some communication or there's some weirdness, and when I say weirdness, what I mean is like a non-traditional dividend, there'll probably be less friction if you have your shares directly registered.
There's pros and cons to direct registering and not. I don't get the FUD for direct registering nor the FUD against it. There's too many competing sides. Why not have both? You want as many angles as humanly possible. So you don't just want to have one bullet in your chamber. I do not think it is wise to direct register all your shares, nor do I think it is wise to have none of your shares direct registered. If I had to just take one side, I would say I would not direct register, because then you can play options around it. You could sell covered calls, you could do some wheel sorts of strategies. There's a lot of different things that you could do to make money while we wait. Because what happens if there is never a MOAS style event, but we have these continuous cycles every quarter? You want to be able to make money in the interim. And if your goal is to make money through this, then you should be learning these cycles and playing them appropriately. And that is what me and Justin's main focus is right now. How are we going to make money until a MOAS style event does happen? Or if it doesn't happen, how are we going to maximize returns through GameStop? Because it has came down to it where people like PyThi or other people, when you start to master these cycles, you can be very accurately predicting the price of them due to these hedging effects. And if you can get good at that, who cares if something like this ever happens, because you're making so much money. You don't want it to happen, because you can make such great returns just doing a variety of option strategies, making money while we wait, or just during these cycles. Justin.
Absolutely. What could be more poetic than using the shorts' own strategies against themselves to acquire even more shares of GME?
The main benefit towards direct registering is the psychology of seeing what other people are doing, as well as I think it will help exacerbate a MOAS style event. I think it could make one bigger, but that does not mean it will start one. In fact, I do not see a situation where direct registering your shares is starting MOAS, unless, of course, we triple, quadruple the numbers. And
yeah.
As of right now, we're not.
I think it is overly optimistic to think a massive surge in direct registration of shares will trigger MOAS. But I also think it is too dismissive to say that the DRS angle will not play a part in all of this. Again, if you have very complicated, machinery or mechanisms, whatever, that are employed by the bad guys in order to manage the price, anything that you can throw at them to otherwise impinge, complicate, or gum up their works, I think is a step in the right direction. And to that end, I think DRSing shares is an added heartache for them. Do I think it's going to end the party for them by itself? Probably not. Do I think DRS, in conjunction with many other things, both that we can probably speculate and probably things that we cannot speculate, but will become apparent as time goes on, do I think it will be a big part of the puzzle by the time the dust settles? I would guess yes on that front. So again, summation, there is probably a time and a place to DRS. If for no other odd reason, you just have diversified your holdings from brokerages. So if your Fidelity's down, great, whatever, you can go deal with computer shares. If computer shares down, you might have some at Schwab, Vanguard, IBKR, whatever, right? So I think it's just good business practice in general to mitigate your risk, assuming you have shares in sufficient quantity where you can spread it out.
And in final regard, just to wrap it all up, should you direct register your shares? Well, the answer is just more complex than that. It is a yes and no answer. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and let us know what you think about this situation in the comments below. Thank you.